Hello everyone, I'm glad to be here again, Florence Theriault, and I'm going to show you some wonderful dolls and talk to you about different things of doll collecting today. The dolls I'm showing you now are from an upcoming auction that we have entitled Other Kinds of Roses, Different Ways to Dance. This is our 50th anniversary year of Theriault's, and for this anniversary I've chosen catalog titles I've used in the past that I thought were particularly appropriate or had special meaning to me. That one was in honor of my mother, who many years ago, after she said, "Florence, you're working all the time, she said, "Why don't you stop and smell the roses?" And I didn't know how to answer her, but later I did. And I called her and I said, "Mom, you know what? There are other kinds of roses, different ways to dance." So that is what doll collectors do. They recognize other kinds of roses. And we have this wonderful auction to present to you with dolls that are from the collection of Madame Bossard from Lucerne, Switzerland, with most of the many fabulous doll houses and doll rooms here are from her collection, and also Rose Rogan of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. One of the highlights of this auction are the great bevy of little dolls that we have. I so regret when I do these talks to you that I only seem to be showing the dolls one by one by one. And I'm not letting you see what you would see if you actually attended one of our cataloged auctions, which would be the displays that we do of dolls. Every one of the dolls appears in a display, and I think it makes people really happy to see how dolls can be arranged in their homes, and also to see them in a more artistic setting than just kind of lined up on a table. So for this auction, what I did for this video, what I did for you was to make two mini displays of mini dolls. And these are some of the wonderful examples from this auction. Over here on my left, I'm starting with one of the cover dolls from the auction, which is this extraordinary little size 1 Bebe Brew. Everything about this doll is just golden, just golden. She is a rare size, a size 1, fabulous antique costume, which might well be original, including her shoes, which are ankle boots, rare to find as it is, excuse me, and check the bottom, signed Brew. Absolutely wonderful, very, very rare. And then the doll itself. I'm going to put her back in her little arrangement with her other little friends here. And the doll itself, she has all of the features that people look for in a Brew. She has what is called the stuck-out tongue, which I think is kind of not a pleasing phrase to use, but what it means is her mouth is modeled closed, but there is a modeling of a little tiny tongue tip between the lips, and that is a feature that collectors really look for to define this golden age of Brew. She has perfect fixed hands, and everything about her is really extraordinary. She's standing next to one of the many wonderful all-bisque dolls that appear in the auction. This particular doll has her all-original costume. I'll move her to the front here a little bit so perhaps the camera can pick it up a little better. And she has her original costume. And let me turn her around now so you can even see the back of the costume as well. Absolutely wonderful. Fitting perfectly, very, very tight to the body, which is what the style would have been. We have a little boyfriend of hers, another little all-bisque doll. And the little mini dolls that came in from Madame Bossard are so wonderful because I try to go into the mind of the collector. What did they love? And Madame Bossard clearly loved very curious things, very unusual things. And many of her dolls are found with little accessories, like he's holding this carved bone hobby horse, a wonderful little all-bisque doll. Let me move it up here to the front so perhaps you can see that a little more clearly. It's a choice little doll. Next to him, okay, I brought this home and showed it one of our Facebook Live things because I had unpacked it that day and it just spoke to me, I guess because I have 2 Boston Terriers. But here's a very early Stife bulldog, a velvet bulldog with the original ruff, little amber eyes, but he is absolutely, absolutely wonderful. There's another little all-bisque miniature standing, a mignonette, and she's standing on a chair, and she's sold with the chair with her original costume. Many of the items in this auction we're selling like a doll with the different accessories that Madame Bossard had arranged with the doll in her collection. Another wonderful little Steiner, a Series A in this petite size that everyone loves. I did a catalog once I called In the Palm of the Hand, because they were dolls that little, so little that you literally, you could imagine a child holding this doll in the palm of their hand, much like, 150 years later, 100 years later, children were holding little Wendykins or little Ginny dolls in their hands. Little dolls have always been a special source of inspiration or love to children, and that has carried over in the collecting of them in years later as the dolls become antique. Here is a gorgeous Gaultier bébé in this petite size, the kind you all love, with the kid body and the bisque hands, because the bisque hands, you can see the detail on them here. Let me move this up front so perhaps the camera can pick it up a little better and see the detail on the bisque hands. They're sculpted differently than the Bru. Some would argue even a better modeling of the hands on the AT. And I will turn it around so you can see the back of the dress. It's all original dress she's wearing. It's a wonderful little doll. She has the category of eyes that I call the splendid eyes. Very, very deep spiral threading and just very dramatic. And they are, to me, this is my taste, they are the center point of any really extraordinary French doll has got to be the beautiful eyes, which she well has. One of the many accessories in the auction is the little tripod table, and we've shown some of these pieces so you can see the scale and the kind of dolls they would display with. And here's a wonderful early table with its collection of antique ormolu accessories. And this beautiful lady's desk with the raised detailing and garlands on the front. And then opening, so this would have been sold actually as probably a stationery box originally, and then designed for it to be used by a child as display with their dolls. The French were very remarkable in doing this, in creating wonderful little pieces that had their function first, many of them as candy boxes or sewing boxes or something of that nature, but designed as an object that would incorporate with the child's dolls in the little arrangements they might make. And now here we are 150 years later doing the same thing with them, which is wonderful. I'm going to turn to the other side of the room now and show you some other examples of the wonderful little dolls we have in this auction. On the far right, one of my favorite dolls in the auction, because this doll shows up so seldom. And it is one of the earliest period Bébé Jumeaux, only ever came in this tiny size with that little hint of a piquant smile on her face. So absolutely precious. Now the kind of mischief you see in her mouth, I like to think, is what makes her a little bit of a rough and tumble girl, because her dress has gotten a little frail on the silk, but that's okay, because every time you look at that face, you just want to capture this doll. And again, the beautiful eyes, which are very, very rare to find on a very early doll of this nature, are well executed here. Look at that bonnet, isn't that great? I love this doll. So as many of you know, I don't collect dolls myself. It's considered an ethical issue that we're selling dolls for other people, and it's a conflict of interest if I were to want to own them. But I like to feel that while the dolls are in my care, I'm their keeper. And I love this doll. I cherish her in particular. And if I were a collector, she would be living in my home. I think she's wonderful. So I hope someone will buy her that will love her as much. We are also having a beautiful little Schmidt, the little girl in the white dress, and she is that size 000, which is a very, very desirable size and has her original Schmidt body. Another little early Premier Jumeaux over here. Again, all with their original bodies and wonderful condition of the bodies and wonderful antique costumes. This little girl as a mariner. I'm going to turn her around so you can see her from the back as well. Very unusual color of this mariner costume. Very lush, full mohair wig. Original body and body finish. And beautiful eyes and bisque, and a grand size. And look at the Steiner, that little tiny early period Steiner in her own little chemise with the woven bonnet and the flowers on it. Absolutely a very precious doll. Now, if you're going to be displaying them in your home, one of the things you might want to display them with are the Märklin baby carriages, of which this auction offers you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's another one too that I'm not showing here. And they're all, each is different, each is a different style. You have, this is a very unusual one with the front, so if the woman were pushing it, mama, pushing it, she has the wheels like that. And then she stops to talk to her neighbor, so she lets the carriage rest, and it rests on these back legs. A great little style. And a very lovely one here. A beautiful little stroller over here in its wonderful original aqua and cream colors. We have another woven style back here in a different, this is a round shape, or oval rather, as opposed to the rectangular of the one in front. And then another little stroller, similar to the one that we're showing here, with the resting legs in the front and a hinged footrest, so it can be brought up to rest little child's feet. So a wonderful example of the many beautiful early dolls in this auction. Now, just to complete this little vignette setting, if you've noticed, they have a bunny standing in the background. He has the bunny in the cabbage, and let's let him play for a minute. As soon as I can locate the pull-out key. And here he comes. I thought I would stay with French dolls for a little bit and show you some of the other wonderful French dolls that are in the auction. And first I'm going to work with the firm of Leon Casimir Bru, who has offered wonderful examples in this particular collection. And I have on my right-hand side 3 bébés that really exemplify the classic face period of the Jumeau. The first doll on the right is the doll that is popularly known as the bébé brevet. This was the first bébé model presented by Brew, and it was it's a very soft, gentle face. It's always found on the early gusset-jointed kid body. Well, once in a rare while you will find it on an all-wooden articulated body, but never on the straight-leg kid body from the later period. But the brevet is a very, very special. Immediately, when I say immediately, I would say within 1 or 2 years after the bébé brevet coming out, we had Brew offering his doll that collectors popularly call, the girl in the blue dress popularly call the circle dot model. The reason it's called that is there is an impressed symbol on the back of her head of a circle with a little dot in the middle. Now, actually, that was not a mark that the manufacturer put on there to identify his doll. It was a mark that he put on there to identify where the turn screw would go if the doll was used as a bébé têteur or nursing brew. And that's why the little mouth is modeled with a particular ability to have a little drilled hole between the lips if it was to be the têteur, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Again, very beautiful eyes, very wonderful, little, very firm kid bébé bodies on both of these dolls. Remember, at this time, Brew was a really, well, he wasn't a renegade, he was a traditionalist. He wanted to stay with the kid bodies that had been the main form of body found on the poupées that his firm had offered for decades. And so when the bébés were first issued, about 1875 and then really beginning in 1878, most of the makers, led by Émile Jumeau, went with a composition and wooden bodies. But Brew said, no, I'm sticking with the kid body. That's the way I'm going to go. And so that's mainly what most of his bébés were. Originally, they had the early gusset jointing on the body, forcing the dolls, because he made them very plump. They kind of, over the years, their legs are in an awkward position that neither sit nor stand. Now, I don't know if that's the reason or not, because to me, their faces are the most beautiful faces of all. But collectors really today tend to look more toward this third period of Brew, which is considered the Brew Jaune, the face, the classic doll. This is the face, the same one as the little one we showed you just a few minutes ago, that has the tongue, the little tongue tip sticking out between the lips, very, very gentle, but yet, just artistic and beautiful, beautiful face. But collectors tend to pay and seek out this model of Brew much more than they do the others. And you know what that says to me? Do you know? It says opportunity. These are gorgeous dolls. And for collectors wishing to have a Brew, a centerpiece Brew in their collection, the two periods here, the Brevet and the so-called Circle Dot Brew, represent wonderful financial opportunity for collectors in looking to have, if they can't afford the epogee, the height of Brew, then they could probably move into this arena and get one of these beautiful Brews. Of course, what I think, you should have all three. You've got to have the whole spectrum done. Understand, in this time period that we're talking about here, we're talking about mainly like a 6-year period. This is not a long time in the world of dolls. Things evolved very, very quickly. Brew moved from just doing the straight leg, the plump kid body, to having legs that had hinge jointing at the hips, and then wooden lower legs, so the doll could stand. And the body, instead of being as chubby and plump as the early bebés, became the very slender body. I'll show you the back of some of these costumes. You might want to notice her bonnet in particular is quite beautiful. And when she comes back around now, see, I'm seeing her beautiful eyes. The bisque hands are always of great judgment to collectors. They always want to know if the bisque hands are in beautiful condition, and they are really so, so exquisite. And I think, I just want to double check, yes, this girl also has her shoes that are marked Brew Jaune Paris. I hope you're able to see that. To have the original shoes is always a really big bonus on the Brews. And then we have this lovely girl. I love her pale bisque. On the early models, I always look for like wonderful mauve shadowing of the eyes. I'll turn her around so you can see her. And when she comes back around, compare her hands to the hands of the first girl I showed you, and you'll see that the hands tended to become more slender as time went on. I hope these tags aren't in the way, but you can see the different size of the hands. Okay, and then the earliest period, again, the Brevet, very, very sweet also, very, very gentle face with very soft rose blushing. This beautiful antique costume really kind of enhances that look on her. Okay. Now, Brew stayed in business a long time. And I was starting to think about something this morning. You know, I'm always talking to you about, when I'm working on a collection, I like to get into the mind of the collector and what were they seeking to achieve and what did they want. And it suddenly occurred to me, I never talked to you about getting in the mind of the maker of the dolls. And it's very, very interesting to see where they were going with their project. Remember I told you that these faces evolved, were made only for like a short period of time, for like 6 years before we come to the final. But during that same time period, the company, the Leon Casimir Brew Bebe period was like 1877 to the turn of the century. Many, many other types of dolls were made. And to me, it's interesting. What was his agenda? What was he trying to do? Was he reaching out for different markets because he wanted to try to find different people to be buying his dolls? Was he just bored and so he would try new mechanical gimmicks and things, and I'll show you something in a minute? Or did he get involved with high fashion so he would really look to achieve dolls that would have outstanding costumes? So many of these things come into thinking, and if you do get a chance to own the Brew book and read about it, you'll see all of the inventions that he did. And even after he left the world of dolls, around the turn of the century, he continued to work things in different kind of inventions that he did in other fields. So clearly he had a mind that was not just where our mind goes when we look at a doll to see a beautiful object, but to create different, ingenious, mechanical things, also a reflection of the end of the 1800s. I mean, that was the world of industry was growing, and people were really inspired by this, just as people are inspired by what they can do with the virtual world today. But let me show you a few other great examples. Let's stick with some of these earlier dolls for a minute. I talked to you about the Circle Dot Brew, and I wanted to show you this doll that is in the auction, and you can see the face. This is the Bébé Têteur. It's the early period Bébé Têteur. Têteur means nursing. This was a nursing brew. When it was sold, it would have a baby gown on it, and it would come with a little bottle, little baby bottle, which was designed that the doll would suck. And the child could make that happen by turning this metal screw at the back of the head, which was why that symbol, the circle with the dot, would be on the head. So whoever was inputting the mechanism into the doll's head would know, okay, this is where you put the screw. And then the rubber ball would be in the head, and then that would cause the sucking mechanism on the doll. It's really fascinating to me that this doll, we tend not to think about it, but this doll was one of the longest periods of production from the Brew company. They first introduced it, I think, in 1880, and then it was still being made at the end of the century and into the period where SFBJ bought the company. So clearly, like the nursing brew was very, very popular, Bébé Têteur. And if you think about dolls that are popular with, I don't know if they're popular with children or if parents want them to be popular with children, or maybe it was a different time when there were more babies coming in a family, and if you were a young girl and your mother was going to have another child, maybe she would want to introduce you to the care of a child. So nursing dolls were popular, certainly with the parents, if not with the children. And think of it, right up to the 1950s, Didy Baby. And I'm sure many, many dolls that are made today are dolls that can be fed with a bottle. Another doll that was made at the time, and I'm sorry, I'm showing you a headless one, but the reason this is in the catalog was this doll was so extraordinarily rare. This is the model that Brew made, and he called it the Bébé Gourmand. And when I said to you, what was the motive of the manufacturers, the designers when they were making these dolls, this doll is one that always comes to mind when I'm thinking, I want to say, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? The head was designed that when you turn the knob, the tongue came out on the baby. You put the little biscuit on the baby's tongue. The tongue would withdraw into the head, would go down through a tube in the leg, and be digested through the holes at the bottom of the feet. And I'm thinking to myself, what was he thinking? Why would a parent want to teach their child this is how food is digested? It's a quirk of nature, and I think it's pretty much fun. And if you are lucky enough to own a Brew body for the Bébé Gourmand, the chances are that you will not have a really nice one in great condition like this one is. So this is a great find for someone who's looking to upgrade their collection. And then 3 brews from, I think there are like 6 brews in this auction altogether, maybe like 10 brews in this auction altogether. But I'm going to show you 3 more here that I found particularly interesting. The first one I'm going to show you is this wonderful brown complexion brew in a petite size 2. And number one, again, the size is great rarity. The body is all original. She has perfect brown bisque hands, which is great, again, greatly to be desired to find the bisque hands on these dolls. And she has a wonderful antique costume. Very, very beautiful example. The exotic dolls were designed to appeal to the people that were traveling internationally and coming to the Parisian World Fairs. And so hopefully that would have been a new market that he was hoping to counterpoint. Then we have this wonderful little boy, this little schoolboy. And again, this is what I told you, that Madame Bassard had so many dolls with wonderful little accessories enhancing them. And this is an absolutely wonderful little schoolboy. He has his leather case and he has his musical instrument. And he is a very classic size 4 Bru. And then, again, Leon Casimir Bru, wanting to get involved with mechanical pieces and different, during the 1890 period, so many discoveries and engineering pieces and mechanisms were being made. And the doll makers, many of whom had been involved making doll heads for automaton makers, said, well, why can't I do something like that with some of my dolls? So one of the things that Bru introduced was called the bébé marchand. And when the key is turned at her side, she walks forward. Now, walking basically involves she moves her feet up and down. And I guess that was kind of considered to be a walking movement. Very, very beautiful doll. One of the things that appeals to me about her is that this is an entirely original costume and it's absolutely exquisite. During this time period of the 1890s, the dresses became a little longer in style. Before they had been shorter, just below the knees, but now in this 1890 period, the child costumes, the bébé costumes that were created by the French doll makers became this, I'd call it a 3/4 length. And then finally, I want to show you this wonderful surprise on her, because you lift her feet and look what you find on the bottom of her shoes. Brew Paris, the original label. This is a style costume that was presented very often by the Parisian doll shop of Onan Bleu. This one does not have a label, but one can almost make a leap of judgment that that's where it would be from.